The importance of academy production is at an all-time high, and it's been in the news a lot lately for a lot of reasons that are not particularly fun and don't reflect the true spirit of the game, particularly circumventing PSR rules. But that's not really why academy production is at its most important, and it's tied to coaching longevity. We're going to talk about the real reason next on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Now, you can never completely remove the financial implications of an academy graduate coming into a team and making an impact from a discussion like this. There's always that financial sort of domino that has to fall, and that's always a factor here. But I don't love talking about academies the way they are being used lately, which is as ways to balance the budget and to sell off and receive nothing but profit back because it was essentially a free player, or this young player swap that's taking place between some teams to balance the book for PSR regulations. That's happening, and those have become an important role for academies, and I'll be honest, I don't like it, but that's not what I'm talking about today. There is an entire other caveat to player development, and it has a lot to do with managers. So we're going to get into that in a second, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in that comment section, let me know what you think. How does your club handle their academy? Are they getting the most out of it? And if not, have you figured out why? Get down in that comment section, let me know your thoughts. Leave some comments for me on Twitter as well, at Pitchside Pub. And check out the website, pitchsidepub.com, where you can go ahead and sign up for our free newsletter. So, youth players, academy players, joining the first team, it's so important for a lot of reasons. And one of them is, it has to be financial. PSR regulations, think of them what you will, but they have definitely had an impact over the last 12 months in terms of the amount clubs feel comfortable spending. And I'm not talking about the player swaps and trying to cook the books a little bit, or what Chelsea's doing with guys like Trevor Chalobah or Conor Gallagher, where they are basically running academy graduates and players they've had for a long time out the door because it's pure profit when they sell them on. I hate that. That is, unfortunately, an important role of the academy these days, and that should be fixed from a regulation standpoint in terms of PSR and the fact that that's such a loophole, or it's such a beneficial thing to a club to sell off a player that is homegrown, that you've had for a long time, because you get pure profit from it, as opposed to buying for a certain amount, developing them, and then selling them, but only getting credit essentially for a portion of the revenue. I don't like that, but it is a role. But there's an even more important role, and it has to do with the lack of spending. Clubs are afraid to go out and spend a lot on the market, so they've got to get young, cheap talent from somewhere, and the best place to do that is from their academy. And so when you can take a homegrown player and insert him into your first team, essentially for free, and have him become an impact player, the value there is just astronomical. Now, I'm not breaking any new ground here, that's always been the case, but as teams can spend less and less, even the Manchester Cities of the world and the Arsenals of the world are a little afraid to go out and spend, and it's why we haven't seen a really truly busy summer on the transfer market. Even the wealthiest clubs are a little bit afraid to pull the trigger, and so when they need to add depth and add to their roster, they have to do it from within. But the best way to do that is through coaching longevity, and I did a video a few months back on this topic, and it was surrounding Liverpool and Connor Bradley, who stepped in when Trent Alexander-Arnold went down with an injury. And Liverpool essentially didn't miss a beat. He's a different player than Trent, but he was really good right away. And the argument I made at the time is the same argument I'm going to make again today, which is the coaching longevity matters. Connor Bradley was able to slide right in to Jurgen Klopp's system because he had come up in that same system, and developmentally on all the under 21 and under 19 and under 17 teams that he had been on through the Liverpool system, they were all running the same style that Jurgen Klopp was running on the first team, and that trickles down. And when you have a guy there for 9 years like Jurgen Klopp was, you get that longevity, so these players are playing the same system throughout their entire developmental process. And that's really important because you slot them in and they can hit the ground running. They're still young players, they're still going to make mistakes, there's still some growing pains, and no, playing at the Premier League is obviously not the same as playing in these younger leagues, but in terms of knowing where they're supposed to be, knowing the formations, knowing their responsibilities, knowing knowing where their teammates are going to be. That level of experience cannot be matched. And so even when you're swapping these young guys the way Chelsea's doing with some other teams, and you slot them into a new system, that is not the same as developing your own young player. That is a step back. Or in the case of a Chelsea or a Manchester United or a lot of these clubs that just have a revolving door of managers, then you're playing a different system on the U17 team and the U19 team and the U21 team. You're getting a new system every time because every time you go up a level, the manager at the top has changed, and the style that you're playing is not the same. And I bring this up because there was a really incredible quote from a young Manchester City player named Nico O'Reilly, who, if you're not following Manchester City's preseason tour, and I wouldn't expect you to be, even as a City fan, they're sort of hard to watch sometimes, but you do get a look at these young players, and he's been doing really well. He is a 19-year-old defensive midfielder, and he may be their best option for depth for Rodri this year, even though he's young and inexperienced, simply because they don't want to go spend a ton of money, and who are they going to bring in that's not going to play that much, right? Who's willing to take on that role? So somebody young is a really good option there. And he's had a good preseason, not that it's really the point here, but he was asked about why he's had such a good preseason and how he's just sort of slotted right in and known what to do. And his answer was really, really interesting. This is a direct quote from Nico O'Reilly at 19 years old after the last preseason game. "We've done the same system since I was a baby, so I do know what I'm doing there in midfield. It's the same philosophy from the Man City Academy to the first team. It's just about finding the pockets and trying to play my game." That is such a telling quote from a young player, and it really epitomizes my point here, which is he didn't have to worry about what his role was, where he's supposed to be, because he's done it since he was a young kid. He's been in this academy for probably a decade now, and most of that time Pep has been there. And so he's been playing the same style for most of his professional career, most of his development. And so he knows it like the back of his hand. And so, yeah, there's a step up in competition when they're playing, even though it's preseason. But, this is his first taste of playing with the first team. And he's, out there with the Erling Haalands and the Jack Grealishes. And he's expected to know where to go with the ball. And he does, because there is a familiarity there. And that's why coaching longevity is so important, and why I am consistently harping on teams and criticizing them for firing managers too soon. And if you want to look at Chelsea and the problem they're having, look no further than the managerial revolving door and what that does to developing players. And they've got all this young talent. They're going out and getting a lot of young talent, but they can't just slot them in the system like this is Football Manager or like this is FIFA and expect them to just hit the ground running. These guys, the Conor Gallagher's at Liverpool and what O'Reilly is saying here at Manchester City, they know this system like the back of their hand. It's why City was okay letting Cole Palmer go, because they have Oscar Bob and he's been with them for a long time. And obviously you have to be talented. That's a huge part of it too, but they know the system. So they know when Pep calls on them, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And that has always been important. And that's why coaching longevity has always been important and is massively undervalued in the footballing world. But I think it's even more important today than it has been in the past, because these clubs need these young players so much more than they ever have. Especially the big clubs like City have been able to just go out and buy the Calvin Phillipses when they want to put somebody in for depth. And yeah, that one didn't work out so well, but they could still do it. And Matthias Nunez and some of the other guys they spent a ton of money on. Now they're afraid to do it. It's not just them, it's lots of other clubs really don't want to spend the big money on these expensive players because they are afraid of the possible repercussions and possible points deductions. So they are going to be more willing to rely on their academy talent. But that's not going to be the same for every academy and every club. You watch the clubs that have had managers in place for a longer period of time, and you will see consistently that those academy players will have a shorter learning curve. Even in a place like Arsenal, where we're going on year 4 of the Mikel Arteta tenure, that starts to having a lasting effect. When you call up a 19-year-old, that means he's been playing the same style since he's been 15. It really starts to snowball as these guys hit year 3, 4, and 5, and they've done that development in their teens, and now they're in their late teens, early 20s, and they're getting a chance. So that's a trend I'm going to watch very carefully this season, is how academy players adjust to the Premier League, and I'm going to make note of which ones come from academies where they've had one first-team manager for a long time versus where they're having the revolving door and they're constantly changing, and more importantly, when they make the changes at a different style every single time, right? Tottenham going from Antonio Conte to Ange, right? You couldn't be more different. And so when you're just yo-yoing back and forth, what that does to player development. And Tottenham's a great example because they have a ton of young talent that they just brought in. And if you haven't seen the video I did on that yet, check it out. There's a link down in the bio or in the description to that as well. But if they will stick with Ange for a while, those players will develop playing his system so that when they come into that first team, they will be able to hit the ground running. I think that is exponentially important, and it's getting more and more important by the day. And I think it's a massive undervaluation in the footballing world just how much a managerial change sets you back. The managers, the administration only looks at it at the first team results. And can we get one more win? Can we get a couple more points? They do not factor in enough for the trickle-down effect to what it does to the rest of the academy, and I think young Mr. O'Reilly is summing that up for us here absolutely beautifully. But I would love to get your thoughts. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think about this general philosophy. How does your club handle academies? Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can leave some comments on Twitter as well, at Pitchside Pub. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel, and of course, check out our website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.